Hi, this is John Harcher, and welcome to episode 3.5 of Left Turn at Albuquerque. Kind of a bonus episode for the bonus disc included with Platinum Collection Volume 1. We get a heavy dose of Chuck Jones, both in the form of documentaries and other work he did outside of the regular Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. Then we get a glimpse of what things were like when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, through to the modern era, and how tunes have changed.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I should have turned left at Albuquerque.
Disc 3 is almost entirely dedicated to Chuck Jones with a number of hidden gems, including a recently discovered one that hadn't been seen in decades until this came out. It starts with the greeting from Chuck from Golden Collection Volume 1, followed by 3 documentaries: Chuck Amuck, Extremes and In-Betweens, and Memories of Childhood. After these, they select 9 tunes, some of which were made for various reasons other than to be shown in theaters as entertainment. Mostly these were PSAs or made with and for the armed forces. The rest were oddities, and I stress the word odd. First is Point Rationing of Foods, a 1943 short from Golden Collection Volume 3. Oh God, I think I'm going to be seasick. Describing the system put in place during the war, narrated by Warner's cartoon voice of authority, Robert C. Bruce.
In the point rationing system, all these foods are grouped together, and your ration book is used to buy those you like.
This one looks pretty beat up. I don't know if there's any way to restore it. But just watching this, can you imagine people these days doing anything like this? What war will do? Next is Hellbent for Election, actually a UPA cartoon from 1944. Chuck was moonlighting, and not for the last time. Produced by the UAW in support of FDR. Is there enough initials in there for you? Eesh. I'm pretty sure I saw this somewhere along the line. I thought it was on one of the earlier sets, but apparently not. Narration is an early job for prolific voiceover staple Marvin Miller, who's probably best known to people my age as the voice of Aquaman from the 60s cartoons.
You've got to sidetrack. The defeat is limited. I'm just the guy that can do it, Sam.
Up next is So Much for So Little from 1950. An oddity for sure, a tune win for Best Documentary. Chuck did this one about infant mortality. Huh?
Of these babies, 118,481 will die before reaching their first birthday.
It's basically a long-form PSA for the Department of Health. It's from Golden Collection Volume 2 and the Academy Award set. It has the start of what you could say is the Chuck Jones look. Those cutesy eyes. Mel does some voices, but Frank Graham does the narration. Next up is another oddity, Orange Blossoms for Violet from 1952, though, to be honest, it looks older. This was originally on Golden Collection Volume 2. Chuck Jones and Friz Freleng teamed up for this non-animated short that featured animals acting like people. Very strange, but it did get some airplay either on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. I want to say Nickelodeon. Now we come to the military. First is A Hitch in Time. This is the newly discovered short from 1955. As I mentioned, it's made for the military. It's about a soldier thinking about life as a civilian, but a gremlin has him consider re-enlisting. Chuck made 2 more of these with a familiar character all grown up, we think. Both of these next 2 were on Golden Collection Volume 4. First is 90 Day Wondering from 1956. Ralph Phillips is all grown up and thinking about re-enlisting with the help of a couple of pixies. See, sounds really familiar now that we know Hitch in Time exists. Dawes Butler does Ralph, sounding a lot like his dad from Boyhood Days. June Foray is Ralph's mother, and Mel does a bunch of the other various voices. The other one is Drafty, Isn't It, from 1957. Ralph is besieged by pixies about re-enlisting, this time for the reserves. Notice the year, 1957. Same year as Three Little Bops with Stan Freberg doing it all without Mel. Here, Dawes Butler takes care of all the voices. Now we get a couple from Chuck's days over at MGM. First is The Dot in the Line from 1965. The kind of thing only Chuck Jones could pull off. A line falls in love with a dot, but has to learn to move to get her, or it. Somehow the combination of drawings and Robert Morley's narration makes these basic inanimate objects live and act.
His worried friends noticed how terribly thin and drawn he was and did their best to cheer him up.
And the style makes it almost as if Chuck returned to his early 40s experimental stage. This was written by the same guy who did Phantom Tollbooth, which Chuck later did as a movie. It also acts as a template for a TV special Chuck did the next year featuring a certain Grinch. Now, this was included on the Academy Awards collection and was just one of 2 non-Tom and Jerry theatrical shorts from MGM in the 60s. And this was the other, The Bear That Wasn't, the Frank Tashlin written story from 1967 that appeared on his Tashlin-centric disc from Golden Collection Volume 3. A hibernating bear wakes up and finds himself going to work in a factory, then has a hard time convincing the suits he's really a bear.
Yes, sir, I'm a bear. That's what I said. You are not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
Paul Frees does the story reading and Gloria Wood does the singing.
Come in, come in, come in, come in.
After these are pencil tests from the Grinch, as well as a very bizarre watercolor experiment called The Door that has nothing to do with Chuck, but was a short distributed by Warner Brothers that was co-produced by Bill Cosby. Not really sure what was going on with this one. Not really sure why it's here, to be honest. Now, after this, we get 9 more tunes, all from 1979 or later. First is the Fright Before Christmas from the Bugs Bunny Looney Christmas Tales special from 1979, previously on Golden Collection Volume 5. This Fritz Freeling tune has Taz somehow ending up in Santa's sled and Bugs having to deal with him on Christmas Eve. Next is Spaced Out Bunny from Bugs Bunny's Bustin' Out All Over special from 1980, which was also on Golden Collection Volume 5. The short also showed up on ABC as an individual tune. Marvin lures Bugs with a carrot and takes him to Mars to be the playmate of Hugo, the abominable snowman. When we saw it on Saturday morning TV, they'd replace the original credits for the show with a generic title card. The disc actually includes neither. I had to get both of these off the internet. Now, all 3 shorts from this special, Spaced Out Bunny, Supersonic, and Portrait of the Artist as a Young Bunny, are in Boomerang's current rotation of, it's now down to like 108 shorts. I'll recap that at some point. Speaking of Mars, the next one is Duck Dodgers and the Return of the 24th and a Half Century from Daffy Duck's Thanks for Giving special from 1980. This marks its digital debut in any form. It was on VHS. Duck Dodgers and Marvin battle again, this time with Gossamer in on the fun. Now, this was the first time the character was actually called Gossamer. In the earlier 2 Bugs Bunny cartoons, it was given different names. We'll go over those when we get to them. The entire special was later on the Essential Daffy Duck 2-disc set. Then we move into the modern era. Another Froggy Evening is from 1995. A sequel to the 1950s classic takes the same premise and puts it into earlier times, such as the Greco-Roman era and the Revolutionary War. Jokes are pretty much the same. A couple of interesting cameos are sprinkled throughout with a surprise guest at the end.
I think you know who he is.
Believe it or not, they showed this in front of the Nicolas Cage Meg Ryan film City of Angels. Talk about 2 things not going together. Jeff McCarthy does the singing this time out.
We were sailing along on Moonlight Bay.
Which brings up the point that I forgot to mention that William Roberts did the original voice of Michigan J. Frog before he was called Michigan J. Frog back in the original. Next is Marvin the Martian in the Third Dimension from 1996. This was actually an attraction at the Warner Brothers store in New York for years in the late 90s and early 2000s. And yes, it was shown in 3D, but not on this disc. Marvin and Daffy/Duck Dodgers battle once more, this time on a film set before ending up on Mars making sure plenty of stuff is thrown towards the audience. It starts off looking sharp, but then kind of gets drab at the end. Joe Alasky steps in for Marvin,
Halt, Earth creature!
and the author of the Wilhelm scream himself, Sheb Woolley, is on board. But like the Wilhelm scream, it's just stock sound. Now, also from 1996 is Superior Duck, an interesting item since it has legendary mimic and our favorite Riddler, Frank Gorshin, doing the voice of Daffy, and Thurl, Tony the Tiger, Grinch singer Ravenscroft, narrating the story of Superior Duck, who looks suspiciously like Duck Dodgers. Lots of cameos here from the other Warner characters, including one you don't associate with Looney Tunes. Now, this appeared before the Tom Arnold film Carpool. In other words, it was rarely seen, but it's now in frequent rotation as part of Boomerang's 100-and-something tunes, and has also been on MeTV's Tune In With Me. Frank does Daffy and Foghorn Leghorn, for the most part, very well. Every now and then it sounds like Frank Gorshin doing Daffy Duck, trying not to sound like Frank Gorshin doing Daffy Duck, but that's what it is.
Why did I get into the animation business anyway?
Eric Goldberg and Jim Cummings also pitch in for a few of the characters. Next is From Hare to Eternity from 1997, the end of an era, the final Chuck Jones directed short ever. He also did Superior Duck, now that I think about it. Bugs and Sam battle it out once more. This was made as a tribute to the then recently passed away Friz Freleng, hence the name on the ship, Yosemite Sam, and all the music. This was done as an extra on the 1998 DVD for the Looney Bugs Bunny movie. Frank Gorshin does Sam, Greg Burson does Bugs. And another one from 1997 is Father of the Bird, the end of an era, the final Chuck Jones produced short ever. Stephen Fossati, who wrote this, as well as Another Froggy Evening and From Hare to Eternity, directed. Sylvester finds an egg to eat, but it hatches, and he ends up being its mother.
Mama.
Now, I had heard of this before I got this on the disc, so I did some research. Didn't seem particularly well liked, judging by the online reaction. I was just trying to find out info on where this had appeared, and all I saw was, boy, this sucked post, you know. I didn't find it all that bad. I didn't find it all that good either. But Joe Alasky does Sylvester, and June Foray does the bird. The final short is Museum Scream from 2003. On a disc with oddities, this is a definitely strange one. A Looney Tunes done in a different animation style. Sylvester tries to get at Tweety in a museum, and the expected museum-related hijinks occur. The characters just looked odd. Kind of like the Filmation Tom and Jerry compared to the MGM ones. Frankly, for these characters, the Looney Tunes show version looked better. Now, I love the trivia on this. This was supposed to appear in front of 2003's Looney Tunes Back in Action, but was pulled to appear in front of the Scooby-Doo sequel, then didn't show up there either. It was written and directed by Dan Povenmire, who later created Phineas and Ferb. Jeff Bennett is Sylvester, Billy West is Tweety, and June Foray is back as Granny. Now, sadly, of the new era voices, Joe Alasky and Greg Burson are no longer with us. Jeff Bennett is now kind of the go-to guy for a lot of the characters. Okay, so now let's take a look at the set itself. This was the original release of the set, as you can see, in a nice big box. And then what happened is you do this, flip it. It's got the metal magnetic thing there. And you got all the pictures lined up in here. So, first off, we have the set, which we've been looking at. And you got booklet, all kind of info, pictures, the whole 9 yards. This is a full set of that. Then you pick it up, and as you can see here, you got a nice little bow there to pull things out of. You get a couple tchotchkes with it. In this envelope, you have a certificate and a newly made cell just for the set. You'd think, like from the way they described it, it would have been like an older cell that they snuck it. No, this is brand new, newly made. You have Tweety, you have Porky from Duck Dodgers, you have Robin Hood Daffy, you have Sylvester from the Scarlet Pumpernickel, you have Elmer from What's Opera Doc, and Bugs as the bullfighter, the bullfighter from Bully Bugs. So that's that. And then you also get this mirror for your refrigerator. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Doesn't have anything to do with the DVDs or anything for your viewing pleasure, but you know, kind of make you think it's worth your money to spend it on this. So they went all out for the first edition. Now, the strangest decision regarding this release was a year later to also have it put out in a DVD version. What was the point of ending the previous DVD collections to start a new series with higher quality, then release it the same old way they've been doing it? And playing off that, I don't get the decision to include the third disc in standard definition. I understand it would require going back and restoring all of those tunes, and you saw some of them look kind of scruffy. But the difference in anything pre-90s just really stands out. You know, you could tell from what you saw. But even the later ones look kind of dull by comparison. I think the only one that really popped was Superior Duck. So, on the whole, if you're really into Warner's animation, you can pick this setup and not feel completely, ripped off. This, most of it is doubled, sometimes triple dipped off of previous collections that were out before this. You can take a look at Amazon and eBay and see if you can find it for, something affordable if you want all those little tchotchkes with it. Now, if you can do without them, I'm going to say hold off on searching for this. I'll get to what I think is the best option, just not until I'm done with the other Platinum collections. But as for the next episode, we'll have more new tunes hitting HD. Next time, it's Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 2, just in time for the holidays. We'll tackle all 25 cartoons from the sublime to the ridiculous. I'm John Harcher. Thanks for watching.